Good afternoon and welcome to the October 8th Strategic Planning Committee of the Board of Education. My name is Carla Silvestre and I am a school board member at large. I'd like to start with introductions and I'll pass it on to Ms. Evans.
Good afternoon, Shebra Evans, the current president on the board representing District 2. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Henry Johnson, Chief of Staff, and my office staffs the Strategic Planning Committee.
Good afternoon, Janet Wilson, Chief of Teaching, Learning in Schools.
And Ms. Dixon could not join us today, but she will be watching and sending her comments. We'll have other folks joining us throughout the meeting, but we can get started. Just to provide some background information, we are in the final year of our current strategic plan. Our current strategic plan is from FY18 to FY21, so we are in the beginning stages of that final year. So I thought that it would be appropriate for us at this meeting to do a high-level review of our current strategic plan and the outcomes that we have achieved thus far, as well as have a discussion about what a process for developing a new strategic plan might look like in the spring and beyond, so that we are ready come FY22 with a new plan and a process to get us there. In addition to that, I have always been concerned with the alignment of the strategic plan and our budget, our operating budget. I would like for us in the future to have a strategic plan that guides our budget development process, right? So if we have the priorities of the Board of Education, we're setting the direction for the school system, then our operating budget should be aligned with that. And so one of the things that will help us, I feel, in doing our budgeting differently in the future is looking at how we use our resources. And the ERS study, the Equity Resource Study, pointed out other jurisdictions, comparable jurisdictions in terms of demographic size and high quality education, that use their resources a little bit differently from how we use ours. And so I asked Dr. Johnson and Dr. Wilson to look at these jurisdictions and come back to us today for this meeting to share in a little bit more detail in how they are using their resources in comparison to us. And so that we can learn from that and hopefully use what's good in our budget development process in the future. So I believe that they will be presenting some information about Palm Beach County Public Schools in Florida. So with that, I will pass it on to Dr. Johnson.
So thank you, Ms. Silvestre and Ms. Evans and Ms. Dixon, wherever you may be. Thank you for the opportunity to share this afternoon. And as Ms. Silvestre said, this is the final year of the FY18 to FY21 strategic plan. So some important decisions need to be made beyond this year regarding how the board and the community wants to look at strategic priorities for the school district for FY22 to either FY25, or if you wanted to be a 5-year plan, it would be FY27. So that's a decision that the Strategic Planning Committee will need to make, and a recommendation to the full board in the spring of 2021. So with that, I would like to ask our team to pull up the PowerPoint presentation. And Ms. Silvestre has already gone through the agenda for today. We're going to do a high-level overview of the strategic plan with some discussion. And then we're going to ask Dr. Wilson to talk about the Equity Resource Study as MCPS is compared to other school districts, notably Palm Beach County and Florida. And then we want to talk about how we want to begin the whole creation and development of the FY22 to FY25 strategic plan. So with that, if we could move on to the next slide where I'll ask our team to click on the hyperlink that will take us to the website and take us to the FY18 to FY21 strategic plan. So as you can see, if we move down the strategic plan, there are 4 supporting areas, and then there are outcomes and program indicators. And so if we could stop right there for a second, please. The outcomes and program indicators are divided into 6 areas: students ready to learn, reducing and eliminating disparities in student learning, students prepared for college and career, a safe and healthy learning environment, the efficient operations of the school district, and highly effective employees. And if we move further down the plan, please. What you will find here are data and measures. These were the proposed data and program indicators, and how we would determine that those program indicators were met, and what the goal was for those particular data metrics and those data information. So the program indicators under the first one, students ready to learn, we looked at measures like early childhood and pre-K. We looked at Be Well 365, and we looked at the elementary enrichment beyond the school day programs. And some of the measures that we use to determine the success of those indicators would be where Montgomery County falls in the state early childhood data information, the entire Be Well 365 plan, and the evidence of learning readiness data. One of the things that Ms. Silvestre mentioned early in her opening comments was when we look at the new strategic plan in subsequent years, there needs to be a close alignment between the operating budget and the plan. What we have here, as you can see, is additional program indicator funding that says that in addition to the funding that we already have in these areas, there was an additional $8.3 million that would help to support the program indicators. But what this does not have and does not tell us is exactly how much funding in our operating budget is used for the program indicators, the Be Well 365, the early childhood, the elementary enrichment programs. It does not tell us exactly how much money the district spends in those particular areas. And what Ms. Silvestre said that the new strategic plan needs to be able to do, it needs to be able to specifically break down whatever program indicators are determined. It needs to break down how much money is in the operating budget to support those indicators, not just additional funding, but the number of staff, the number of programs, the number of schools that are affected, the number of students. All of that information should be included in the next strategic plan when the committee decides on what those key areas are going to be. So as we move down into reducing and eliminating disparities in student learning, specifically looking at our equity accountability model. This is our model that determines how our students are performing and how can we eliminate the disparities in student learning based upon foci groups that are represented within the district. Our farm students, our non-farm students, our African-American students, our Latino students, and all other focus group of students. So that is how we determined whether or not we are, in fact, closing the gap and eliminating the disparities. And then we also looked at another program indicator that we looked at was graduation. and how are high schools in particular meeting the graduation, hopefully meeting and exceeding the graduation expectations for not only our district, but districts across the state. And then the measures that we used would be the cohort data information, which means the 4-year graduation rate, the local school accountability models, and then how do those compare to other districts within Maryland, and looking at our Maryland state report card. Again, additional program indicator funding, and of course the goal is always to reach 90%. And the question becomes is, did we reach it? Or if we didn't, how could we? Or if we can't, what do we need to do differently in order to reach that goal? In the next area, moving down, thank you, was students prepare for college and career. The program indicators that we concentrated on there would be our college and career readiness indicators, particularly in English and in mathematics. These are indicators that are measured not only within Montgomery County, but they are measured statewide as a part of the Senate Bill 740 that was passed in 2017. The measures that determine whether or not our students are successful in meeting the college and career readiness standards would be our SAT, ACT, performance and participation, the AP and IB participation and performance, and the number of students that have successfully completed the Maryland Seal of Biliteracy. Another area that we looked at was the AccuPlacer of it, more importantly, looking at how many of our students have participated and successfully completed any of our early college programs, our partnership with Montgomery College and other colleges and universities in the local area. And as we move down into the last three, the next one, a self and healthy environment. Here we're looking at programs that we have instituted at the local school level that protect our students, the safety and security of our students, help our students understand good and appropriate discipline within the school day and within the school. And the program indicators that we use there are a Restorative Justice program, how many students are actively participating in restorative justice, looking at how we engage our parents and our families in helping us to support a safe and healthy environment. Again, you will find information here under this indicator related to Be Well 365. And then one of the measures that we thought was important as a part of this particular work is how active are our parents in participating in engagement with either our schools or with the school district in some of these programs that support our students and our desire for our students to come to school and participate in school in a safe and healthy way. And then looking at efficient operations, which was one of the next areas, how well and how effective is the school district in maintaining operations that are sound, that are safe, that are healthy, and how are our schools in maintaining a robust program that supports a robust operational program that supports our educational program. So here, the program indicators centered on the school plant inspections, the work order completions, bus accident information that helps us to maintain effective and efficient operations. In particular, we were looking at one of the data measures that we're looking at is our key facilities indicator, our KFI, that basically outlines every single school in the school district and talks about areas of strength and weakness when it comes to plant facilities, roofing, HVAC, the number of portable and relocatable classrooms that are found on each school property. So those are some of the things that helped us to determine whether or not our schools were efficient and whether or not our operational program is effective. And then finally, we looked at highly effective employees with the goal was to look at making it possible for MCPS to have an employee staff, especially our teachers, that clearly represents the community in which we live. And so here we were, the program indicators centered on teacher recruitment, teacher diversity, looking at programs that support our supporting services staff, move into higher level positions, moving from, for example, a paraeducator into a teacher position, or building service worker into an HVAC position. The constant goal here is to make sure with our service employees that there is growth, there is room for growth, and there's room for them to improve professionally. And here we looked at workforce data, diversity data information, teacher retention information, and we looked at that program and the expansion of the program for our service employees in order to grow professionally within the school district and beyond. So those are the 6 areas that the FY18 to FY21 strategic plan centered our work on and around. And we made some strides, and there were some goals that we were not quite able to meet, but there has been improvement along the way. And I would encourage us to, in the future, when we develop a plan, is to create goals that are not as lofty and create goals that are attainable, and look at ways every single year over the course of the 3-year plan or the 5-year plan, whichever the board decides they want to utilize, and create ways in which we can move towards meeting whatever the goal is that's set by the board and set by the community. So with that, Ms. Silvestre, that gives you a very high-level overview of the strategic plan for FY18 to FY21. And so we can address any questions that you have or any comments that you or Ms. Evans want to make on that plan as we prepare to look at ways in which we can create a plan in the future that will meet the objective of the Board of Education.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. I failed to get Mrs. Evans to agree with the agenda when we started. I recognize that we don't have Ms. Dixon here, so if I could get your agreement with the agenda, Mrs. Evans.
Yep. I approve and support the agenda that we have.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Johnson, the year 3 goals that are listed on our website, those are for year 3, or is that our cumulative goal? So for example, for human resources, it was 49%. That's for the 3 years, or for year 3 specifically?
It's for it's cumulative over the 3 years. Okay. The goal is to improve every single year. And so the last goal that you see there represents the what we have done over the course of the 3 years. The improvement that or lack thereof that has been done over the course of the 3 years.
I'm recognizing that we're not done with year 3, but that's where we are as of today. So I think, Mrs. Evans, for our next board retreat, I think that's in January, we'll have to get the board together to look at the priorities in this plan and then see what they would like to see as a part of a future plan. So that can guide our process. And I know we're going to come to a process at the end of this meeting, but just wanted to, I think that would be a good way to get their input.
No, absolutely. I agree that at our next retreat is typically at the end of the year, and we'll have that discussion on what our priorities are to be able to, as a committee, bring forward the recommendations to the full board. which will align with what we've come up with as a group. Should. Okay.
Any questions on what Dr. Johnson just presented?
No, I was thinking about when we first got started and looking at where we're at now, and we definitely have made progress in terms of the additional items that we've had added. How we talked about, we have talked about trying to add dollar amounts so people can see how it all ties in. So no, I think it's a really great website, a good tool for our community to be able to come online and look at and see the progress that we've made and the work that we're trying to do. So no, I don't have any questions. Everything that I would think to ask that's included is already included here for us to look at. Yeah, no.
I know we are going to talk about process later on, Ms. Silvestre, as we get ready to move forward with the next plan. But one of the things I think has been pretty powerful in this particular plan is looking at specific program indicators. And my recommendation is that we keep the indicators or whatever strategies the board wants to include in the next plan. We can create program indicators around those strategies because I think if we can be specific with a particular program as it relates to the strategy the board would like for us to use moving forward, that gives the community and the public more specific information about how we can meet a particular goal based upon programs that we utilize within the school district.
Could you give me an example of what you mean?
Yeah, so for example, one of the program indicators under Students Ready to Learn is early childhood education. That was a program indicator. And so that provides us with an opportunity, that provides the school district with an opportunity to actually get data or have data that shows whether or not we're meeting whatever goal it is that the board is establishing. It also gives us an opportunity to look at program dollars and connect those program dollars to the indicator and to the plan. So as specific as we can be about what it is we want to measure, I think the better off we'll be. And it'll give us an opportunity to go and look for the resources that have been expended in order to meet that particular goal, budgeted and expended in order to reach that particular goal.
And then I just wanted to restate that it's my goal that in the next strategic plan that the budget items are not just the add-ons,
right,
programmatic add-ons, but are more reflective of the true investment in each of these areas.
Exactly. Because one of the things I think is important for the public to understand is that 92.7% of our budget is staff and staffing positions. And so we should be able to specifically say, for example, if we use early childhood education, how many positions within the district have been allocated for early childhood education, how much money has been spent on program resources for early childhood education. And I think Dr. Wilson's going to talk about that a little later when she talks about what Palm Beach County does, particularly around Title I. And what other than resources, other than those specific resources, are used in order to support early childhood education. So it's very clear to us, and it should be very clear to the public, that in the next strategic plan, we want to be as detailed as we possibly can in showing the public the funding that's in the operating budget for the various programs that we use within our school district.
Great. So I think that's a good segue to our next agenda item.
Right. So our next agenda item, you specifically referenced the educational resource study that was done, in which Montgomery County Public Schools was compared to like school districts, as you mentioned, Ms. Silvestre, not only in size, but in resources and in performance across the country. And Montgomery County is a part of a large district, large county consortium of schools that are very similar to ours, very similar to our school district. And we quite often benchmark our work against those districts. And what we have found in the study that was introduced last year to the community is that there are some stark differences in the way in which we fund various programs and the resources that we use for various programs compared to other school districts that are benchmarked against us. And so with that, specifically, I think you, Madam Chair, found that Palm Beach County, which is larger than we are, maybe using their resources in a different way, and the way in which they're using their resources in a particular area may be something that we should explore or look at, or at least have some conversation around. So with that, I asked Dr. Janet Wilson, who is our Chief of Teaching, Learning, and Schools, who was instrumental in working with ERS on this study, to come before the committee today to do a presentation that looks at Palm Beach County specifically, how they have used their resources in one area, and I believe it's Title I, correct, Dr. Wilson? They use their resources in Title I, the most highly impacted schools, and some of the results that they have seen as related to how they have expended the resources and what their expectations are of their schools or students in their community. Also joining Dr. Wilson is Dr. Deanne Collins, who has a wealth of knowledge in Title I programs, not only across the nation, but within MCPS. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Wilson and Dr. Collins to this conversation. We probably need to pull up, for our staff, we need to pull up the PowerPoint presentation so we can get to Dr. Wilson's slides. Dr. Wilson?
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Thank you, Ms. Silvestri, Madam Chair, for this invitation, Board President, Ms. Evans, and Ms. Dixon. It's always a pleasure to talk about the work, I think, that has really set the stage for much of the current and future work in Montgomery County Public Schools. Just for the sake of the viewing audience, I just want to remind everyone that the Equity Resource Study, which really turns out to be our equitable access to resources work, was a third prong of a three-prong equity achievement framework. And just very quickly, you know that we administer assessments and we ask ourselves the question, how well are our students doing on those assessments? And that's our evidence of learning. We use that data then to actually ask this and answer this question: how well is each of our individual schools serving the students based on those achievement data? And then finally, we ask the question, if we have students that are schools, in fact, that are very similar, then that causes us to ask, especially similar demographically and size-wise, that causes us to ask the question, what do the resources look like within those schools? What's the professional development? What supports are we actually providing? And that's what the Equity Resource Study did for us. Ms. Silvestri, you had a particular question about the Title I pieces of this. And on this first slide, simply again for the pleasure of the view, anyone who might look at this later, we've embedded the PowerPoint slides into this particular slide, but I'd like to move on to the next slide if we could in the presentation. And we'll focus on the particular slide, Ms. Silvestri, that you had a question about here in a moment. The first thing I wanted to do, though, was I wanted to set the stage on this particular portion to MCPS and what our current Title I schools are in terms of number and what percentage of students have to be in free and reduced meals for a school to be denoted in Montgomery County Public Schools as a Title I school. And you can see this is showing FY 15, 16, and 21. No particular reason for these schools. We just wanted to show that really there's not a lot of variance in the number of schools that we call or label as Title I schools over the years. From 15 to 21, it went from 28 schools to 26 schools, and then finally this year we have 31 schools. And each year we take a look at the resource allocation that comes to us for our Title I schools, and we establish a percentage cutoff criteria. So this year, schools that have 61.35% of their student body free and reduced meals eligible, they are served with extra Title I dollars. The reason I wanted to start with this slide is I really want to thank you, Ms. Silvestri, in that this opportunity to talk to Palm Beach really, I think, enlightened me relative to some other aspects of this study that are certainly going to help in the strategic planning process going forward. I do want to recognize and thank Heather Noost, who is the budget director for Palm Beach, and also Nicole Smith, the Title I director. We were on back and forth emails at first, and then had another, two phone calls, and then one actually just as recent as yesterday, because we were peeling back, if you will, layers of an onion. And the more we found out, the more questions, we had about their practices, how they do their budgets, and in comparison to ours, so that their work could be instructive to our work. So as I said, I wanted to start out with this slide because what we learned in this probing, if you will, is that Palm Beach today in the FY21 has 119 Title I schools. And so you automatically say, and we only have 31. Well, my next question to them was, well, if you have 119 Title I schools, you must have a very large Title I budget. And I came to find out that in FY21, our budget for Title I is $32.5 million. And Palm Beach's budget is only $48 million. So there's just a difference of $16 million, and they're serving 119 schools. I also want to mention that in that 119 schools, they have a responsibility by state legislation. They also serve 31 charter schools in that $48 million. So as you can imagine, in my next question to them was, so then how do you appropriate your Title I funding if you have 119 schools? They indicated that they spend an allocation of $435 to $575, somewhere in that range. They give a per pupil allowance. So then in my work with Dr. Collins, she informed me that our allocation per pupil in our 31 Title I schools ranges from $1,400 to $1,600 per pupil. So almost 3 times as much in terms of expenditures for our students versus Palm Beach. So because their allocation per pupil is lower, they actually bring aboard more Title I schools. So what I'd like to do right now is I think it's Carlton that's running this for us. If we could click on the link that's on this screen, we could bring up the slide that I think created some interest for Ms. Silvestri. So if you look at Montgomery County, it appears, and you look at the key, it appears that 94% of our allocation dollars goes to our Title I schools in the area of instruction. There's a little bit of a green bar there that is in the area of professional development. And then a little bit of a blue, which is pupil services and enrichment. If we focus on Palm Beach to the right side of the screen, it's the third bar over, you notice right away that they only spend 40% in instruction, and then another near 50% in the category of instructional support and professional development. So one would ask, why do they have such a stark difference? And what it boiled down to was how they categorized their different categories of support. The one thing I do want to mention, when we looked at, when I contacted ERS, they pointed out to me that the Palm Beach data that appears on this screen was done in 2015. So they were working with Palm Beach at that time. And in 2015, in working with the budget director, 50% of the Title I money was maintained centrally. In other words, they didn't allocate it out to the schools in an instructional category. They maintained it centrally, and they bought positions, if you will, for every Title I school. And those positions were called learning team facilitators. But then what happened in 2017 was their legislature passed a law that said that the school systems in Florida could no longer keep a certain amount of money centrally, that they wanted to fund their schools very similar to how we currently fund our schools, which means 90% of their allocation had to go back out to the schools. So they had to decentralize as a result of this legislation in 2017. So at this point in time, they actually have about 82% of their money going back out to the schools. So if we were to redo this study, we would see something very different for Palm Beach. So I think what I want to point out, I think is the most significant from the way they approach this is, and I held this till just now, is in their 119 schools, they include middle and high school in their Title I funding. Montgomery County Public Schools focuses only on the elementary, and they continue to do that. And if you remember when they did the ERS study, one of the things that was pointed out by ERS was that the purpose for this slide is to show that we do a great job when we look at the funding for need. We put more money where we have identified those needs. But what we hadn't done as a system is we hadn't carried that need through to middle school in particular, and then on to high school. Whereas when we look at our feeder systems and we have students that are in elementary school in highly impacted schools, those students move into middle schools, but we have not really stratified, if you will, our Title I support further up the system. And ERS did point that out to us. But they did laud us for our incremental spending, if you will, as a system that's focusing just on our elementary schools that are highly impacted. So when you look at the budget, I just want to stress that it's all in how it's categorized. So in 2015, when they were allowed to hold the money, they categorized most of what we consider instructional positions, they consider professional development positions. So they were credited to the central office, And it made the appearance that they spent less in instruction in the schools, but these positions really were supporting those schools. And they were, again, learning team facilitators. And later, after this legislature changed the rules, if you will, they became school culture coordinators. And the problem with that was when the legislature changed and said, no, central offices can no longer keep 50% of the money. It must go to the schools. What it created was the inability for some of the smaller schools to maintain that learning team facilitator. And so they lost some economy of scale that they felt they had in 2015 that they no longer had because of the changes in the legislature. I'm going to invite Deanne Collins. If there's any detail that I've left out, Deanne, from our discussions, please chime in. But I also wanted to say that these learning team facilitators are very much like our staff development teachers. They act as instructional coaches, they do data analysis, they try to build capacity of the teams. And the most important thing I think that I can leave about the approach to Title I, and Dr. Collins and I have talked about this a lot, is when you think about Title I funding, whether you're doing elementary, middle, or high, or all three, is that the system has a responsibility first to make sure that every school has, I like to use a cake, every school has positions that are awarded that becomes the cake. But Title I becomes the icing. It's the extra layer that goes into some of the schools that need those extra supports. But the district does have a responsibility to make sure that core services are out there for all schools, and then the Title I pieces layer on. So in summary, the difference boils down to periods of time, the fact that most of the money was coded centrally, but also that the per pupil was much lower because they served more schools. And I could go on. I learned so much about the differences in doing this. I do think that Palm Beach has some things worth noting. And I'll stop there. If you have any questions, I'd be happy. Oh, one more slide, Carlton. If we could go to the next slide, I just wanted to show you our incremental spending over those same 3 years has not been necessarily a lot. If we could go to the next slide. Carlton? Right. And so categorically, when we talk to Palm Beach, they have the same kind of overall budget categories. Funds to the schools themselves, administrative costs, system-wide programs, and equitable services. And so remember I said they had 50% of their money in 15. They had 50% of their money in that system-wide category. We only had 16% of our money in that system-wide category. So that's the core of the basic differences. And you can see that over time, our appropriations of Title I resources really they don't really keep up with the numbers of impacted students and schools that we do have, because it only ranges from 21 up to $32 million. And I think that in and of itself is a story, because that shows you what the local responsibility really needs to be when it comes to serving impacted schools.
Did Ms. Collins have anything to add?
Dr. Wilson did a great job presenting the story. The one piece that I will add is in talking to Palm Beach, my counterpart there, and what we could appreciate is the model that MCPS uses allows for schools to customize their Title I programs to the data at that level, as well as the needs of the school community. And so that's why investing most of the dollars back at the schools is so important and helpful, because each school receives their own allocation, as Dr. Wilson said, and then they can look at their data and develop a comprehensive needs assessment to determine how they want to utilize their staffing. As we know, there's been a shift in needs in terms of support, student support, as well as parent engagement and social emotional, well-being of students. And kudos to the schools who really took a deep dive in their budgets to say, how do we reallocate some of the staffing that in prior years we may have put into other positions such as literacy or mathematics, and prioritized it around hiring a student support teacher who can really be the liaison between the school and the families and the students to ensure that those needs are met and help to build capacity with our teachers. The other nice part about our program is, while many of our positions at the schools budget for are instructional positions, they also have a component of professional learning, and it's job embedded. And so that ensures that the professional learning is tied to the needs of the school rather than the district. So it's nice that each school gets their district-wide, support. Every school gets an allocation, but then Title I is sort of adds to that, right? It's supplemental. And so that's the benefit of the model that we use. And the only last thing that I wanted to talk about is what Dr. Wilson mentioned was the per pupil allocation. If you think about 119 schools, but the schools only get about $545, how far can that really go? Some of those schools can't even purchase staffing because staffing is so expensive, right? And so if you compare that to our range of 14 to 1,600, schools can do a lot more. And they've seen the return on the investment with strategically identifying staffing to support student achievement. So those are the only additional points that I thought were worth noting to add.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to Mrs. Evans to see if she had any questions.
Thank you. So to get my mute together, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate what Dr. Collins said towards the end, because I was wondering, I had wrote down that they had the per pupil allocation between 435 and 575, and just was wondering, what they were able to do per student. It didn't seem like it would be much, but appreciate that what works for them, and that we have an opportunity to do different things at each individual schools. I know we've heard different examples of what some of our principals have been able to do at A&S meetings. We've seen highlighted Gaithersburg Elementary School, what they've done, and Highland Elementary School. So that shows you how people are using their Title I dollars to really meet the needs of the kids in their school. So glad that we can continue to do that. So this was a great presentation. Glad we were able to see how another district is meeting the needs of their students in comparison to what we're doing, because it's always good to kind of benchmark and see if there's things that we can try differently. But I didn't have any questions. I'm really glad that we did the ERS study for us to take a deeper dive to make sure that we make improvements where we can, and we're really getting down to individual students to see what we can do differently. So no questions. Those were just comments that I wanted to share. Thank you.
So Ms. Silvestre, I do have a question, and I don't know if you were able to glean this from your conversations with them, and I don't mean to steal your thunder, but I think you're probably going to ask this question later on. One of the reasons why Ms. Silvestre wanted us to look at Palm Beach County was, in addition to the amount of money, particularly in the instructional area, that they are spending, 40% versus our 90% or something like that. Their performance level is either comparable or higher than ours when it comes to those Title I schools. Isn't that one of the things that you wanted to address, Ms. Silvestre?
Yes.
So,
So-
okay. So I'll let you ask your question. I don't want to steal your thunder.
No, that's exactly what my question was going to be. Are they getting a better bang for their buck?
So, Deanne and I were both on the last conversation with the Title I director. And I really believe, well, there's a couple of things. One is they will tell you that they felt that when they centralized and they were able to deploy to every Title I school, when they were allowed to do that before the legislature changed, that they felt like they got more for their money. But remember, they were also trying to deploy staff out to 119 schools and successfully did that. But then when they had to revert to this other model, they had smaller schools that couldn't afford these extra positions. However, I think that their focus on these school culture coordinators is what they're called now, and the centralized scale or interaction they get with them. In other words, what they do is centrally coordinated with those schools. So we have staff developers that are assigned, that I mentioned were very analogous to these positions, a lot of the same functions that these learning team facilitators that later became school culture coordinators. It's just they changed the title over time. It's the same position. They do all the same things. We have a more decentralized model in that the schools make determinations about how to use that staff. Palm Beach has a more centralized model and a connection with those people in the schools. So the data analysis approaches, the differentiation to the differentiated accountability structures they have, they really call them transformational coaches, but there's a lot of interaction centrally. So the initiatives that happen have this layer of oversight from central office and a lot of coordination from the central office level. So the focus at the schools can be more centrally driven, but they have the customization by this one person. And I think that's the biggest difference that I heard. And Dr. Johnson, I saw you nodding because our staff developers are really school assigned. And there's a wide variety of ways that schools use them, and I'm sure they use them well, but there's not a centralized initiative approach to what they're doing in the schools.
So would you say, Dr. Wilson, that because they use that centralized approach, that there was more consistency across those schools, and therefore they could measure their performance based upon a more consistent model than an individual model that most schools have, most schools use with their Title I funding?
I absolutely agree with that. And I also agree that when it's centrally driven, even though they're based at the schools, there's a lot more economy of scale that can be achieved because the professional development comes into line across the schools. Because I can tell you from the data analysis side of things, when we go from the data across schools, we can tell what the commonalities are in terms of what schools need. But the way we're currently structured, I mean, we get great results, but the way we're currently structured can create some fragmentation between what's going on in one building based on their initiatives driven by their staff developer, and there's a wide variety going across the different schools.
Dr. Wilson, can I just add a little bit context to this too? So two good examples in terms of the return on the investment is, I want to elevate what plays into this is the collaboration amongst the schools. Being that we have a smaller number of schools, the Title I principals come together monthly for professional learning amongst the leaders. And I participate, I co-facilitate with the leaders so that they can target, what resources and supports are needed, as well as have conversations across schools around problems of practice. And to their credit, for the, in terms of the state accountability, we have schools that were identified as target support and improvement schools. When schools were first identified, MCPS did not have Title I schools on the list at all. So that talks about the strategic planning that these schools have done over the years. I mean, that's a state accountability system that's not tied to our multiple measures. So if you think about our multiple measures provide a good framework for the schools to collaborate within their own schools to look at their strategic planning, but then across Title I schools, across those indicators to see, as a Title I PLC, where are our Title I schools performing really well and where do we see the gaps? And then collectively, how might we address that? One position we do have centralized, now this is within Title I, staff development teachers is district-wide, right? But within Title I, we have primary talent development coaches. And that was because a few years ago, we recognized that there was a lot of talent and students who were meeting and exceeding grade level in our Title I schools. They were second language learners and even students with disabilities, but they were being missed. And so this primary talent development coach position, we partnered with the Office of Accelerated and Enriched Instruction to really elevate and highlight talent development in the primary years to surface talent and begin to help to create that pipeline towards higher level courses, schools that have specific programs. And what we have seen as we've monitored over time, more students in our Title I schools are having access and opportunities in higher level courses or programs over the years than they've had before. Even though it's centralized, there's a great deal of collaboration with the principal. So we don't say, this is how you have to use the positions. The primary talent development coaches have professional learning in the summer. We provide that, and then we bring them together between 6 to 8 times throughout the year for their own professional learning to ensure consistency, to talk about problems of practice, and to help with the data monitoring. But it's also in collaboration with principals because each school's demographics and what they need around accelerated enrichment may look different. So we talk about what are the similarities, but then where's the customization? So I just wanted to elevate that the collaboration with the principals and the schools is very key in order to help bring some consistency across the program and the strategic planning. I mean, if you saw the strategic planning that these Title I principals and their leadership teams do, it's remarkable. And that is the beauty of having it at an elementary level, as well as time for the principals to come together.
So what Deanne just elevated for you was, I think, with their 119 deployed that was a centrally delivered model right there. I mean, they are pulling them together. They're looking at these staff developers, recognizing the uniqueness of the schools, but we don't do that with all staff developers across the rest of the system. And so we have that structure specific to Title I, and obviously because we didn't have a TSI school that was a Title I school, that central involvement and cohesion and coordination is crucial, but that doesn't happen in the other schools with the staff developers that are pretty analogous to these learning team facilitators that they have. And so Dr. Collins gave a great example of there's a tension, right? It's like centrally driven, school driven coming together, to recognize the differences in the schools. And they do a great job in that Title I structure within the Title I schools at the elementary level. So thanks for that example, Deanne.
And can I ask a question, Ms. Silvestre? And that's a result of the meta study, the recommendations that came back from the meta study. Am I correct, Dr. Collins, what you just described in terms of the talent development, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so, and let me ask you this question. Did we years ago in central office have something similar to what you just described that they're doing in Palm Beach to help support staff development teachers here in MCPS? No? Yes?
I'm going to defer to my colleagues there. I don't know if ever they were centralized and deployed that way. I know other districts I have worked in, certainly they are district driven, but school placed. So I'll defer to Dr. Johnson, Dr. Collins for that.
So yes, Ms. Evans, when I first got to Montgomery County in 2003, there existed the Office of Organizational Development, and the Office of Organizational Development was responsible for all professional learning activities and all training of our staff development teachers within Montgomery County. And so it was an office in itself that coordinated all professional learning for teachers, for principals, for service personnel, and it was all done at the central level. And then those people went out into their individual schools. Those positions were hired by the principals, but then they went out after they were trained, they went out into their individual schools and they worked with their school leadership teams in developing school improvement plans and other ways in order to measure student performance. And then maybe it was like 2007 or 8, Deanne, I don't know if you remember, that office was abolished. And so it became a more school level function for the staff development teacher with some central level training, but not the level of training that they had received in the past. And so that's where you get, as Dr. Wilson mentioned, that's where you get all the different schools doing their own thing based upon whatever was needed at the school level or whatever they wanted to do. But when the Office of Organizational Development existed, they didn't tell the schools what they needed to do. They just provided consistency in the organization of the staff development so that they could take those behaviors and those practices out to the schools and utilize those practices within the staff and the faculty of those schools.
Okay. So I'm going to make the assumption that budget cuts maybe happened. And so, okay. All right.
That was one of the cuts that was because of the recession in 2008-9.
Right. Mm-hmm. All right. Okay.
So did we answer about the outcomes? Are they getting higher outcomes with their Title I schools than we are? I recognize we are doing a similar model in terms of coordination and centralization, but I wanted to ask that.
I did not look at their outcomes. Ms. Silvestri would be happy to do that. And I know Dr. Collins certainly can also do some comparisons. I'm sure that because of the federal structure of these assessments, they have something similar to the TSI schools. Also, the schools that are in school, the need of school support. So we can take a look at that. I know that, like us, they remarked that the number of impacted students moving into their district, based on the needs that the local budget has to provide, because Title I, I showed you our increases in Title I have not been much based on the level of impact that we've seen coming into our district. And I know that theirs was the same. We can certainly take a look at that. They talked an awful lot too. Sounded like we were talking to ourselves. A lot of the same issues, discussions, approaches, organized abandonment. We tried this didn't work, so we moved to this. The legislature stepped in and said we have to do it this way. So really a lot more similarities than differences.
Yeah, I would appreciate if you could just follow up with the outcomes. And just to close out, if Mrs. Evans doesn't have any other comments, is what are the high level learnings? Did we learn anything from this process? Sorry, I'm trying to turn off my phone.
Dr. Collins, I'm going to let you start and then I'll fill in.
So for me, it was a confirmation that the way we are using our resources is really truly meeting the needs of our students. That we are strategically thinking about our resources. Like I thought about how we spend almost $1.4 million to fund full day Head Start. That's a big chunk of our money, but we're investing in something that's meeting the needs of a larger community. The other learning was, again, in terms of like they talked about, they have a tiered structure for Title I as well, and we've discussed a tiered structure in MCPS, over the years, and might that be an option? But there's pros and cons to every situation. They also allocate their Title I fundings based on free and reduced meals rather than the direct certification method, and have found that the free and reduced meals calculation provides better funding for the district, and that's what we do at MCPS. So it more so for me, just having an initial conversation, it kind of confirmed the work that we're doing, and it confirmed, I think, for myself and my colleague in Palm Beach, that the strategic planning around funding is critical to student achievement, and we're all dealing with some nuances that unfortunately may impact the performance of how students are doing. And so you have to really peel back the layers in order to get a good understanding of the return on the investment of the funding. And the multiple measure system that we have in MCPS really helps us to do that. And so I was very appreciative to kind of have that conversation and talk that through.
So can I add one thing, Ms. Sylvester? I think for context, and Dr. Wilson mentioned this earlier, one of the reasons that we may have seen at one particular point in time a level of performance in Palm Beach that may have been better, very similar to ours, is because the data in the ERS study reflects work that was done in 2015 and probably before 2015. It'll be very interesting to see now, almost 5 years later, how they compare to us, considering there have been a number of programs and performance measures and frameworks that we have put in place since 2015 that will probably show some similarities between the performance level there and the performance level here. I think that's important to note that under Dr. Smith's tenure, we've done a lot to look at the disparities and look at the inequities within our schools, particularly our Title I schools and our most highly impacted schools, in which I don't know this to be the fact, it may not be, but I think that we will see that the performance may have changed as a result of some of the programs and things that we've put in place.
So, Ms. Sylvester, your question, I think, is a really good one about, the takeaways. I think one of the things that we know from the evidence that Dr. Collins was able to present was we had no Title I schools in a TSI or a school support improvement. So that means our incremental spend that we're using, the $1,400 to $1,600, and the ability for the schools to customize towards their needs is working for those schools. I think that's a takeaway, and I believe that now that Palm Beach has to use that model too, they're starting to realize that. But Dr. Collins also a great example of how the people come together and the staff development and the initiatives are discussed, and there's sort of a streamlining that doesn't occur with our other staff developers in our other buildings. So there's that piece. I think the other thing that was validated for me is the notion of the fact that they continue to recognize that kids have needs beyond being in an elementary that's called Title I. That we need to be looking at what we're doing in terms of this differentiated spending, if you will, for middle school, because the impacts of poverty continue as students move into middle school and high school. So I think Palm Beach acknowledges that. although they said up front they'd love to be able to give more of a per pupil, but they can't do middle and high. If they were to do our 15 or 1600, they couldn't serve that many schools. So it's asking the question, how do we differentiate and do the same kind of thing that we're doing for elementary, recognizing that students age up, they have impacts from poverty, some are still in poverty, and need to be on free and reduced meals, but we know they don't submit an application. But the need is still there.
Great, thank you very much. I think for me, I appreciated hearing about the no Title I schools in a TSI status. I think that's very telling.
Very good.
I also think that, we have a lot of students in poverty that are not in Title I schools. So it's wonderful that Dr. Collins is doing a fabulous job with Title I schools, but we still have a lot of students that need the support that they're not getting because they're not in Title I schools. So let's think about that a little further. And I really want to have follow-up conversations about how do we support the middle school and high school students that need that extra support. It just breaks my heart that you finished 5th grade and now a couple months later, you're, no additional support. So I'd love to have follow-up conversations about what we could do differently for our middle schools and our high schools that are impacted. So thank you so much. It's very helpful, and I appreciate all the time and energy that you spent in peeling the layers of the onion, right? to learn from our colleagues down south.
Thank you. It was good for me too.
So thank you, Dr. Wilson and Dr. Collins. We appreciate you spending some of your afternoon with us and providing a perspective from another school district that's similar to ours and how they do their work. So thank you. Thanks. So Ms. Silvestri, the next topic on the agenda was to begin to talk about the development of the strategic plan for the next 3 years, FY22 to FY25. And one of the things that I thought about is the need for us to be more transparent in this approach and have not a large, but a wide community stakeholder group that can work on whatever the strategic priorities are as articulated by the board after your January retreat. So the way in which I think on our side, on the administrative side, that we should organize this work is to begin to seat this work group based upon the recommendations of the committee, seat representatives from the community, from the schools, from our parents, from our students, and organize that so that we, possibly prior to the end of the calendar year, which would be December, and then when the board has its retreat and comes out of its retreat with a set of strategic priorities, then the strategic plan work group would be ready to move forward with the work as articulated by the Board of Education. And then they would work in the subsequent months of February, March, April, May, and then come back to the Strategic Planning Committee in May with a proposed plan for your approval that you could take to the full board in the summer of 2021. So that's how I would lay out the work from this point forward for the district administration in relationship to the priorities that are mandated by the committee and by the full board.
I really like that thought process. I think that we have seen with this COVID crisis how integral the school system, if anyone ever had a doubt, how integral the school system is to our society, economy, our families, and so our businesses. And so I think I really like the idea of having a wide stakeholder group that, have participation from all of those sectors that I just mentioned, because we need their support in the future as we continue to seek for taxpayer dollars to fund all of these initiatives and things that we know we need for our students to be successful. And so it's important that we hear from the business sector and from other sectors in terms of the direction that they want to see as taxpayers and stakeholders in our county for our school system. And of course, we will have a new board come January. And so it'll be important that we get the direction of the full board in terms of the board priorities and then have the process as you described. I don't know if Mrs. Evans has any thoughts about this.
No, I agree. I like the idea. Dr. Johnson, nope.
So our homework assignment for the members of the committee to take back to the Board of Education is to either, you have identified some of the various sectors within the community that should serve on the work group, but perhaps the board itself collectively or through the committee could give us other sectors within the community. And some of them are going to be natural that we get input from all the time. But one of the public sectors that you mentioned, Ms. Silvestre, is the business community, or maybe even the science research community. We haven't traditionally gone out to people that are not directly connected to schools and connected to education for the input, and this would be the perfect opportunity for us to do that and start a trend that can really work for the school district in the future, not only on the strategic plan, but in other areas of work that we do to benefit the community. So what we would need from you would be the various, you and Ms. Evans and Ms. Dixon, and ultimately the full board, would be what groups or individuals would you like for us to ask to serve on this work group? Because I think it's important that we at least, if nothing else, seat the work group and get those folks who are interested in working on it before the end of the school year, so that when you all come out of your retreat, we are ready to move forward with getting the work done that needs to be done in the amount of time. And it's a short window of time to get the work done that needs to be done so that we can present something to the full board in May or June or July, so that we're ready with a strategic plan for FY22 to FY25 by the opening of school next year. So that's what we need. That's what we would need from you. And we'll go from there, and we will get members, or you can recommend members to sit on the work group, and we'll get started with our first meeting sometime in December, so that we can just organize things, so that we're just sitting and waiting for you all to provide us with some strategies, priorities and strategies that you want us to look at moving forward, so that we can get this work done in a timely manner.
Great. Yeah, I think we can do that.
Okay.
I wanted to get your thoughts about how to, I know the budget development process is really ongoing, but really starts as soon as the last budget is adopted. But your thoughts about how to get that process to start thinking about alignment with the strategic plan. Do you think that they could, ideally we would have a strategic plan, and then they would build the following budget based on that new strategic plan. But how do we get them to start thinking about it this year so that they're better equipped to do that the following year?
So I think one of the things that we do is once the board or the committee has determined what the priorities are going to be, then even though we will have presented a budget to the board for possible adoption sometime in January, then we would make amendments and changes to the budget structure itself to align with your priorities. Aligning the budget to the priorities is not as, I don't think it's as difficult. I may be wrong, but I don't think it's as difficult, because it's just a matter of looking at various categories and saying this category goes under this priority, this category goes under that priority, and looking at it that way. And the budget and finance group department, which falls under my direction or the direction of the chief of staff, is already kind of anxiously waiting to determine what the board wants to do moving forward, so they can start to organize their work in that manner. So they're aware of it. It's just a matter of now, once the board gets the superintendent's recommended budget and is working on it, because we know that the structure of the budget isn't going to change. The numbers are probably going to change. But once we have the structure that will be introduced to the community and to the board on December 30th, we can take that structure and start to begin to look at and be ready when you come out with your priorities to make the necessary amendments and changes in order to meet those goals.
Great, thank you. Dr. Wilson, you came back on. Did you want to say something?
No, this conversation always interests me, because as Dr. Johnson was talking, you know, and I've gotten these questions before, how much do we spend on reading? So when you think about how much do we spend on reading, and you think about all the different categories that a budget has to support reading, so it comes out of the instructional resource money, it comes out of the staffing money, it comes out of professional development money, you know, so there's all these categories that really feed into building a program, if you will. And so as you think about strategic planning and, you know, aligning a budget to it, it's doable. And I'm thinking about, Dr. Johnson, this is in your area too, the new enterprise system that will afford us an opportunity to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. But I know that the pandemic kind of interrupted that timeline, but I think that's how we were heading, to think more about building program-based systems where right. We know what actually goes into supporting different kinds of programs.
Right. And there's also an accountability piece to that too. And I think that's one of your interests, Ms. Silvestre, is that, you know, when you say we spend $10 million on this, then the question that we need to address is, so what was the return on investment for that $10 million? And that's where the accountability measures have to come in. So I think and that's where we have to be more transparent to the community so they can see, and therefore our staff have to be more transparent to the community as well in the work that they're doing in order to support the funding that they receive.
Absolutely. And even on a school level, right. We give another reading specialist or another position. Did it have any impact? Did we see any change? And right. There's a level of kind of high level and school level accountability that we're interested in.
Because particularly in Title I, you know, you can get diminishing returns on investments. So in other words, you meet a threshold, and it wouldn't matter if you would add another staff member per se, because, you know, adding additional staff takes more space, it takes more structure in the schedule. And so sometimes adding staff really isn't the answer. But going back to Dr. Johnson's earlier comment, when you say how much do we spend on reading, we can pretty much say that in the reading program, 92% is staffing, because we're looking at reading specialists, we're looking at content specialists, we're looking at just the general education teacher in elementary who teaches reading. A portion of their salary supports, you know, the reading program. So it's complicated, but definitely doable if you think about it from a program aspect and which categories support that program, but they come across the whole budget.
And so our budget and finance group will be ready to move forward when the board gives us the priorities. We'll be ready.
And then Dr. Collins said that the data should drive the budget.
Mm-hmm. And that has been that has been done in most of our budgets, but I don't think it's been as pronounced, and people realize it, because we have seen some improvements. For example, we added the equal opportunity schools at the high school level. That's a great example. We added the equal opportunity schools in which we support more students, particularly students in our highly impacted schools, enrolling in and completing advanced placement in IB courses. And so because of that investment, we've seen an increase in participation, and we've seen an increase in performance for the district. And so that's an example of the accountability that we would need to see based upon the programs that we are implementing. Now, there are other programs in which we put X amount of dollars in that we may not see that same level of return on accountability. And so that's where you have to weigh from time to time, well, is this a good program? Is it not? What changes need to be made to the program or whatever, in order to get to a point where we're seeing similar return on investments in some of our higher performing programs.
And that analysis, Dr. Wilson, is part of the budget development process, the what's working, what's not working, and let's move the money here or there?
One of the complications of cause and effect is that it is difficult to say that this particular thing caused this increase, because if you look at a student in general, lots of people, lots of programs touch that student. But we can, and Dr. Johnson's example of the equal opportunity schools, that is one that we really can tell a return on investment because it's isolated to kids in specific classrooms. And we can also look at what their GPA was before they entered into that program and what it is now. So it really depends on the program. But yes, the team downstairs can certainly isolate and look, but we always put that little caution on that certainly other things, other people are also affecting this process, but we can look at it at a program level for most things.
Great. Well, this has been a very interesting committee meeting. I think I'm gonna watch it again to process everything that you said and help think through some next steps. We've heard some very valuable things today and things that can then help our planning for the future. Mm-hmm. So if I'm not missing anything procedural, is there anything else, any final thoughts or anything else we need to cover? Okay, well, if there's nothing else, we are adjourned. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.